journalist, most recently working with Aljazeera, and I'm from the Philippines originally, where we have our own interreligious conflicts. And the more time I spend covering the situation in Southeast Asia and indeed the world, particularly in the Middle East, I always am just horrified and deeply saddened by the amount of conflict that we have in the names of different religions. We heard a kind of structural framework for thinking about whether peace is possible just now, and we're going to try and take some of those ideas in the panel now to discuss them from the very different and distinguished points of view of the panelists that we have here. It's a real honor and pleasure to have them here, and I really hope that we can get some fantastic insights from them. Just to introduce everybody, to my immediate right is Prematilaka Serisena from Malaysia. He's with, there's a really long name. He's with the Malaysian Consultative Council of Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, Sikh and Tao. And what this is a government-recognized coalition of non-Muslim organizations. So they consult each other on religious issues. And I'm sure that must be a lot of fun. I wish I was a fly on the wall when those meetings happen. Having lived in Malaysia for 5 years. Okay, to Prem's right, of course we have Venerable Paisal Visalo from Siam-Thailand. He probably needs no introduction. Many of you are familiar already with his work and wisdom. To his right we have Dharmachari Lokamitra. He has lived in India for the last 35 years and done a lot of work with the Dalit community and converted to Buddhism. To his right is my compatriot actually, Charlito, Kaloy, Manlupig from the Philippines. He mediates in the peace process between the government and a splinter communist group, and in Mindanao, which is one of the most violent regions, I hate to say that, but one of the most beautiful regions as well of the Philippines. And to his right is Khalid Samad. He is actually on the central committee of the PAS party here in Malaysia and also the Member of Parliament for Shah Alam. So as you can see, we have a panel of people who are trying to make interreligious peace a reality. There are those of you who probably looked at the theme of this and saw it and thought, is peace possible? I don't know about anyone else, but for me, I thought, well, it should be. Like the ideal is, of course, yes, peace is possible. I can bring peace into my household. I can bring peace into my heart. It should be possible to bring peace to the world, shouldn't it? And then you hear someone like Dr. Zani explain how, well, it's really hard actually. Can I ask for your reactions and thoughts on the speech we just heard and what we're doing here today? If I may just go one by one in this direction. Thank you very much indeed, Prem.
Thank you. Very good morning. Selamat datang ya kepada Malaysia. So as
Prem, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to mention, if we could keep it to about 5 minutes each, would that be okay?
Is there a timer here? Okay, let me start with a pantun ya. Silat, taekwondo, selembang, wushu, kuatkan tulang menjadi kebal. Rakyat bersatu, negara maju. Malaysia dijulung di pentas global. It is a pantun, it's a poem in English which says that Silat, Taekwondo, Selembang, which is with the Hindus, and Wushu with the Chinese. We do this to strengthen our bones and so that we become strong. The citizens of Malaysia, united, the nation will progress. Malaysia is held high in the global world. So the question today, is peace possible? Yes, I'm a Buddhist. The Buddha said peace is possible. It is possible if we are sincere, if we understand each other, if we understand each of us belong to different races, belong to different religions. It is possible. The pluralism of religion must be accepted. Number one, it must be accepted. Let me tell you, we take offense. I, as a Buddhist, take offense to be referred to as a non-Muslim. A non-Muslim is not a religion. There's nowhere in the world is there a religion called non-Muslim. Alright? There are Muslims, but there are also Buddhists, there are also Christians, there are also Hindus, there are also Sikhs, there are also Taoists, and there are also those of other faiths. This diversity must be accepted and appreciated. If we do not appreciate this diversity, this pluralism, we will always talk about peace. Is it possible? It is. What is in our minds? Today is Deepavali. It's a festival of lights. Can we use this occasion to light up our hearts and our minds to appreciate each other? Once we do this, we have lesser problems. One Malaysia, they talk about understanding, accepting, and celebrating. This is the Malaysian roadmap. As far as Majlis is concerned, this is a very long name, it's the alphabet soup, but it is the only way to keep everybody happy. So that the Buddhists are referred to as B, the Christians are referred to as C, the Hindus as H, the Sikhs as S, and the Tao, who came later, as T. So when we say that we use the alphabets, then nobody gets upset. Yeah? If they come last, it's okay because they chose to be named as Taoists. So this is something we did in order to have a balance. MCCBCHST, the alphabet soup, we are 30 years old. But what is our roadmap? Our roadmap is this. For Malaysia, there is only one roadmap. Many faiths, one nation. Our diversity must be accepted. Our pluralism must be accepted. There is no tolerance in this. There is no tolerance in this because I'm different. As a Buddhist, I'm different from the Muslims. As a Christian, the Christians are different from the Buddhists and the Muslims. The Hindus, the Sikhs, and the Taoists all have unique traditions, unique teachings, which are profound. We are no lesser than the other. So we must stand up and be recognized as Buddhists. We must stand up and recognize as Christians. We must stand up and be recognized as Hindus, Sikhs, Taoists, or any other faiths. Not to be categorized as non-Muslims. Because that becomes superior, inferior. We are not the same. So the non-Muslims are not the same. So as far as Majlis is concerned, our advancement from year 2013 and above is that we want to be recognized as different religious components existing in Malaysia. We do not want to be classified as non-Muslims. Thank you.
Asking the question of is peace possible is like asking is enlightenment possible. As Buddhists, we would say, of course, enlightenment is possible. But enlightenment possible in terms of individual, not enlightenment for all people. The same as this can be applied to peace. Peace for all or eternal peace may be difficult or impossible, but peace for particular place in particular time is possible and it should be. From Buddhist perspective, there are two levels of peace: inner peace and outer peace. What Monk Sunny informed us this morning is mainly about the socio-political peace, which is very important. It is the external peace that should be should be realized. But this is possible only when inner peace has been achieved. Inner peace will contribute to the culture of peace and will encourage the system or structure of peaceful coexistence, free from exploitation, free from oppression or even war. Regarding inner peace, we have to be free from conceit, attachment of ideas, and craving. These three set of kilesa, tanha, mana, titti, and tanha is the root cause of violence, not only to oneself but also to the others. The war around the world in many places are caused by the conceit, the sense of superior conceit regarding race, ethnicity, language, or religion. Attachment of ideas also lead to violence. In Thailand, we have a conflict and violence between different groups, different political groups, and in many countries, the violence because of religion, political ideology is widespread. I think that religion should be the vehicle for peace, because all established religions aim to reduce selfishness, reduce self-conceit. But in reality, we have to agree, we have to confess that religion, a lot of religion, including Buddhism, has been used to justify violence especially against the people of different religion. Religion, including Buddhism, has been used to sanction violence against the other group of people, even against its own people who have different ideas, different idea about religion. I think that it is very important for religion, especially Buddhism, in order to create peace. The first step is to avoid being the source of hatred, avoid being the source of discrimination, avoid being the source of violence. Because even we as a Buddhist, sometimes we feel that we are superior to other religions. Even among the Buddhists, there is a division among Theravada and Mahayana. Theravada people or Theravada monks feel that they are superior to Mahayana people, and vice versa. Even among the Theravada, there are differences among Buddhists, Thai, Myanmar, Sri Lankan, and each national Buddhist seems to regard themselves as superior to the other people of the same Mahayana tradition, the same Theravada tradition. I think that we have to be fair and to be sincere with ourselves, to be sincere with our religion, to be sincere with the teaching of the Buddha, that try to be self-critical, try to reduce the self or the superior conceit in our mind, and try to regard the other people as the human being, not to see only the difference, but also see the commonalities between other people, either Buddhist, either Mahayana, Theravada, either Buddhist or Muslim or Christian. First of all, we are human beings, as Monk Sani mentioned this morning, that first of all, we are human beings. We should see the commonality in this aspect too. Without such a perspective, it is possible for religion to instigate violence. So this is my lecture.
Fellow human beings, thank you for giving me this opportunity. One of the main hurdles in peace today, and I suspect throughout history, has always been religion, ironically. And one of the greatest religious innovators of recent times, I believe, has been Dr. Ambedkar, amongst whose followers I'm working with in India. And I want to say a few words about his approach to Buddhism. They're not just relevant, I believe, to his so-called Dalit followers, but I believe his approach has more universal significance. He was born an untouchable, which makes up 1/6 of the Indian population, well over 200 million people today. He was the first in Western India to matriculate. You can get an idea of the backwardness of the community. He committed his life to establishing what he considered true democracy and a society based on the principles of liberty, equality, fraternity. He was a great politician, lawyer, one of the people most responsible, if not the person most responsible for framing the Indian Constitution. He's an economist, educationist, but he came to the conclusion that democracy was not merely a matter of governance. It was essentially an ethical affair. And he said it's fraternity is another name for democracy. And democracy is not merely a form of government. It's an attitude of respect and reverence to all human beings. So he felt that when he was drafting the Constitution, he said that actually laws are only concerned with keeping the sort of minority who are going to sort of act in difficult ways in line, as it were. Most people are governed by religion in the form of morality, or by religious morality. So he wanted a religion that supported what he saw as the essential moral values for a good society. And it was this thinking that led him to Buddhism. He said famously, many of you have heard, I derived the principles of liberty, equality, fraternity, not from the French Revolution, but from my master, the Buddha. So he came to Buddhism not out of spiritual revolution, but he came out of social concerns. He wanted a religion that encouraged the cultivation of attitudes that he saw led to the best society. His teachings, although he had that social concern, he insisted that the change had to start with the mind of man. It had to start with the individual. And his teachings were very simple, very profound. He said the Dhamma, he didn't speak of religion. He said the Dhamma and religion, they're not the same. He said the Dhamma is nothing but ethics. And then he said, ethics is the same as love, or metta, or maitri. And he said, these are universal. These have to be universal. They can't be applied just to one group and not another. And then he said, ethics and love are not different from fraternity. And it's fraternity that guarantees liberty and equality. So, I don't have time to go into them, but I just want to make these points. But he went further. He talked about Saddhamma. Again, not religion. He said the purpose of Saddhamma is to change the world, make the world a better place. And he said we have to test our practice as to the extent it helps to break down barriers between human beings and establish equality. These were the tests he gave for true Dhamma practice. He started with the individual. He went on to this spiritual community, the Sangha, but he said, I would have upasakas in my Sangha. He talked of the Sangha as a model or a microcosm for a new society. So again, the link. The Sangha is not just a place where people who are committed practice. It has this outward-going dynamic. And I think it's significant that he said he would have upasakas, lay people in his Sangha, because however positive a community of monks and nuns may be, it cannot be a model for the wider community. So I just want to make 2 points to draw out of this. I've been involved personally in a lot of Dhamma training in India, and what I found is that the deeper people go into practice, the more confident and empowered they become. Yeah? So this is very important when we're talking about religious harmony and communication. The deeper people go in Dhamma practice, and I suspect this is the same for other religions too, yeah? The more positive you become, yeah? The more universal open your heart, the more capacity for understanding others you develop, the more awareness of others you develop, the more energy you have for the pursuit of the good. So this is the first point I want to make, that the Dhamma training, deeper Dhamma practice, does not necessarily split people apart from members of other religions. It actually can be a big factor in drawing people together. And the second point I want to make is that Dr. Ambedkar and his followers came from perhaps the greatest form of structural violence the world has known, or one of them. He could have become a communist. If 200 million people had become communists these days, and there are wonderful things in communism, I don't want to downplay that, but in India you've got an extreme form of Maoism, which is very, very destructive to civil life, and India would be a bloodbath today. But he wanted the path of peace. He was not ever attracted towards terrorism or violence of any kind, despite the suffering he and his people had suffered. They still suffer enormous provocation. Discrimination, violence. My wife, who's from that community, was hit in front of me in a village near where I live. But this is not uncommon. So many of my friends and family members suffer discrimination, suffer violence. But just referring to something yesterday, I've never ever heard in the 35 years I've been in India of Buddhists initiating violence. They may be angry, they may be furious with the way they're treated, but never ever ever have I seen them initiate violence. In 1981, sorry Veronica, just 2 more minutes. In 1981 I was a monk and I was in Gujarat, and there were riots between caste Hindus and Dalits. And I went there during that time, and the little Buddhist vihara was in a Muslim slum. It's very significant. I would give talks every night in the different Dalit localities. And people would come with their hands bandaged, blood coming out of their head. They'd been attacked. But they wanted to listen to the Buddha's teachings, the teachings on the path of peace. They didn't want violent retaliation. And there was another example of this in Mumbai about 15 years ago. The government of Maharashtra published a series of books of Dr. Ambedkar's writings. And one of these was called The Riddles of Hinduism. And some right-wing Hindus didn't want these published and started violence all over Maharashtra. I had to cancel a lecture tour because people were being killed in the villages I was going to. Buddhists didn't retaliate. They just took out an enormous big march in Mumbai. It was so big that the right-wing Hindus gave in. So again, they took the path of peace, not the path of violence. There's much more I'd like to say, but I think that's enough. Yeah?
Thanks very much indeed. That was a really good speech. We've had three really great talks so far. Just want to give everyone a check of the time. It's about 11:10. Just want to say that 11:30, I realise that the monks are going to need to leave and have their lunch. So we'll pause for a minute there. But I think that we'll have time. Vienna was telling me to talk for another 15 minutes if we're at that point of doing more interaction with the audience, which I really hope we will. So just to let you know, if we hit 11:30, we're going to pause. Kaloy, please.
Thank you. Good morning, my friends. I am Kaloy. I come from the most war-ravaged region of the Philippines, that is Mindanao. I work with a small NGO called Palay Mindanao, meaning Home for Mindanao, doing modest community-based peace building, trying to help create spaces for dialogue in areas directly affected by violent conflicts. I am also mediating a peace process between the Philippine government and the Communist Revolutionary Workers' Party of Mindanao. In my homeland, I have worked with and among the most violent armed groups, both state, the Philippine military and police, and non-state, the various armed rebel groups. I must say that working with them has convinced me that there is hope for peace. I have seen the personal transformation even of the most hardline protagonists. I have seen relationships being built, being transformed. This optimism does not diminish the urgency and the necessity of addressing and confronting structural violence, especially issues of injustice, inequity, poverty, underdevelopment. Justice and development are the other names of peace. Working with the communities in my homeland and working with over 300 Asian peace practitioners who are members of a network of Asian peace practitioners called Action Asia has convinced me that peoples and communities are capable of winning their own victories, of winning their own peace. Peace processes are holding because those involved have begun to find common ground. There has been genuine transformation of individuals and of relationships, which will hopefully lead to transformation of societal structures. More importantly, there is a growing peace constituency that will not just allow war to continue happening. Inclusive peace is possible if no one is excluded. It is not about defeating the enemy, but transforming relationships and structures. We just have to believe that all our modest peace initiatives add up. Like 100 or 1,000 flowers blooming, as we in the peace movement would call it, peace written large. The winds of change are blowing, and many homes are happy to welcome this change. So they open doors and windows. Trust, which takes so much to build, is beginning to be built among the protagonists in the violent conflicts. Structures of violence are not immortal. Peace is possible when people refuse to be victims. Peace is possible when people begin to realize that the most basic resources for peace are ourselves. As the late Deka Ibrahim said it, I refuse to be a victim. I choose to be a resource for peace. Yes, there is hope. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Veronica and all fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start my short speech with a reference to a verse in the Quran, which reads, وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَآمَنَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كُلُّهُمْ جَمِيعًا. If your Lord had wished, He would have made all those who are on this earth believers, meaning Muslims. أفأنت تكره الناس حتى يكونوا مؤمنين. Are you then to try to force people into becoming believers? So basically, from this verse of the Quran is an acknowledgement